Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
Imagine a country that is extremely big. It is so large that it stretches across many hours of the day and night. This country is Russia. To travel from one side to the other takes a very long time because it covers 11 different time zones. Russia is the biggest country on our planet by how much land it has. Its area is much larger than countries like Canada or China. You might ask, why is Russia so huge? How did it get all this land? This story will explain the history behind Russia's great size. Russia was not always this big. It grew over many centuries, step by step. Different rulers and groups of people helped make it larger. There were important reasons for this growth. A main reason was safety. A large part of Russia is flat land, like a wide plain. It did not have natural protections like high mountains or big seas on all sides. Because of this, people inside Russia often felt worried about attacks from neighbors. To protect themselves, Russian leaders often tried to take land from nearby areas. This gave them more space, like a big wall, between the center of Russia and other countries. This search for security was a big reason for growing. Another reason was money and wealth. New lands offered valuable things. For example, the cold lands in the east had many animals with expensive furs. People went there to hunt and trade these furs. Later, they found other important things like oil, gas, and minerals. Taking control of these lands made Russia richer. Being bigger also meant being stronger and more important in the world. Russian leaders wanted power. They wanted their country to be a major player among other nations. This story will show how these searches for safety, riches, and power helped create the huge country that is Russia today. It grew bigger and bigger over hundreds of years. 2. The first big steps. Long ago, the land that is now Russia was not one country. It was many small parts. In the 1200s, a strong group called the Mongols came. They rode horses from the east. Their large army took control of many Russian areas. These Mongols were part of a big empire called the Golden Horde. The Russian areas had to pay money and follow the Mongols' rules. The land was broken and under outside control. In the northeast part of this land, there was a small place called Moscow. At first, it was not very important. Other places were bigger and richer. But Moscow's leaders were clever. They knew how to work with the Mongols. The Mongol leaders needed someone to help them collect money from all the Russian lands. They chose Moscow's leaders to do this. Collecting this money, called tribute, was a hard job, but it helped Moscow's leaders become important. They traveled around and saw other lands. They also kept some of the money for themselves. This made Moscow richer. With more money and power, Moscow started to take control of areas near it. They bought lands, fought for lands, or joined with other leaders through marriage. Slowly, step by step, Moscow became the most important Russian place. As the years passed, the Mongols' power became weaker. In the late 1400s, a strong leader named Ivan III ruled Moscow. He is called Ivan the Great. He made a very brave decision. He said Moscow would not pay the Mongols tribute anymore. The Mongols tried to fight, but Ivan the Great was ready. He fought them off and made the Russian lands free from Mongol rule after many years. Ivan the Great also brought many other Russian areas under Moscow's control. He united a large part of the Russian land. After Ivan the Great, his grandson, Ivan IV, became the ruler. He is known as Ivan the Terrible. In 1547, he had a special ceremony. He crowned himself the first Tsar of all Rus. This word Tsar is from the word for emperor in old languages. It showed that the ruler of Moscow was now like a king over a large country, not just a prince of one area. This was the start of the Tsardom of Russia. The first Tsars wanted to make Russia bigger and safer. There were still strong groups near the borders. To the east and south were the last parts of the old Mongol groups, now living in areas called Khanates. They could attack Russia, so the Tsar's army fought them. In 1552, Russia took the land of Kazan. This was a key area on the Volga River. A few years later, in 1556, Russia took Astrakhan. This land was at the end of the Volga River near the Caspian Sea. Taking Kazan and Astrakhan was very important. It removed threats and gave Russia control of the whole Volga River. This river is like a big road through the land. It also opened the way to move further east towards new lands, like Siberia, which we will read about next. These were early steps in Russia's long story of growing across the land. 3. Across the wide East. After getting stronger in the west, Russia began to look east. This land to the east was called Siberia. It was a huge land with many forests and rivers. Why did Russians go east? There were important things there. One very important thing was animal fur, especially sable fur. This fur was very valuable, and people in other countries wanted to buy it. Traders from Russia wanted to find these furs. They saw Siberia as a place of riches. Brave men called Cossacks helped Russia move east. These were fighters who lived on the edge of Russia. They were good at traveling and fighting in new places. They often went first into the wildlands. A famous Cossack leader was Yermak. In the late 1500s, Yermak and his men went into Siberia. Yermak fought against a local ruler there. He won the fight. This was a very important step. People say Yermak opened the doors to Siberia for Russia. After his victory, more Russian traders and soldiers came. Moving across Siberia was not easy. The land was very big and wild. But Russians kept going. They traveled along the big rivers. They built small wooden forts and towns in different places. These forts helped Russia control the land. Soldiers in the forts would collect tribute, often in furs, from the people living there. Step by step, the Russians moved further and further east. They built forts along the rivers like the Ob, Yenisei, and Lena. After many years, they reached the very far east. They came to the big ocean, the Pacific Ocean. This happened in the mid-1600s. Russia now reached from one side of a big land to the other. Later, Russians even went across the water from the Pacific coast. They explored and settled in a place called Alaska. So, for a time, Russia had land in North America too. But later, in 1867, Russia sold Alaska to the United States. The move across Siberia made Russia much, much bigger. It added a huge amount of land to the country. This was a big part of how Russia became so vast. 4. To the warm south. After Russia grew big in the east, it looked south. South was land in Central Asia. This land had wide, flat areas and mountains. Russia wanted this land for different reasons. First, there was good land for farming. People could grow plants like cotton. There were also ways to trade important goods with other countries. Russia wanted these things. Also, Russia wanted to feel safe. The land to the south was open. Other big countries were near. Russia wanted more land between itself and these neighbors. It wanted a safe area. So, Russia sent soldiers and groups of fighters like the Cossacks south. They moved into the lands in Central Asia. They took control of areas that are now countries like Kazakhstan and parts of Uzbekistan. There were small kingdoms in these lands. Russia fought and took control of these kingdoms one by one during the 1800s. At the same time, another big country, Britain, was also interested in this part of the world. Britain had land in India. Russia and Britain did not want to fight a big war directly, but they competed for power and land in countries nearby, like Afghanistan and Persia. People called this the Great Game. Russia wanted to make sure Britain did not come too close to its new southern lands. Russia also moved into the area called the Caucasus. This is land in the south, between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. It has high mountains. In the Caucasus, Russia fought with other big empires that were already there. It also fought with the people who lived in the mountains. This fighting went on for many years. But slowly, Russia took more and more land in the Caucasus. It added areas that are now countries like Georgia and Armenia to its empire. Taking this land in the south helped Russia. It gave Russia control of important ports on the Black Sea, which are warm water ports that do not freeze in winter. It also made Russia's southern border stronger. So, Russia became much bigger by moving south into Central Asia and the Caucasus. It added a lot of new land for farming, trade, and safety. This push south, like the push east, was a big part of how Russia grew so vast over many years. 5. Soldiers and big plans. Russia's land was mostly flat and open. There were no tall mountains or big seas to stop enemies easily. Because of this, leaders in Russia often felt unsafe. They worried about attacks from nearby countries. They wanted to have safe borders. Their big plan was to push these borders far away from the center of Russia. They thought that if Russia had more land, especially on its edges, it would be safer. This extra land acted like a safe space or a buffer zone between Russia and its neighbors. They believed that taking new lands was important to protect the lands they already had. Special soldiers called Cossacks helped Russia do this. They were brave fighters who lived near the edge of the country. Cossacks were very good at moving across new lands and fighting. They helped the Tsar and the government take control of new territories. The government often gave Cossacks land in these new areas. This helped keep the new land safe and under Russian rule. The Cossacks were like a mobile army living on the border. Russia's push for land was also because it competed with other big countries. Countries like the Ottoman Empire or Britain also wanted more land and power. Russia often raced or fought with these other empires for control of land on their shared borders. Taking land from rivals or stopping them from taking nearby areas was part of Russia's plan to become stronger and more secure. So, Russia grew because its leaders wanted safety for the country's open lands. They used special soldiers like Cossacks to explore and fight. And they competed with other powerful countries for land and influence. This long history of wanting safe borders and competing with others helped make Russia very big. 6. A new country, old lands. After the time when czars ruled Russia finished, a new government started a different kind of country. This new country was called the Soviet Union, and it began in the early 20th century. The leaders of the Soviet Union decided to keep almost all the land that the old Russian Empire had controlled. This meant that the Soviet Union was still a very, very big country right from its start. For example, it kept the huge areas in Siberia and Central Asia that the czars had added over hundreds of years. But the plan of the Soviet leaders was to make the country even bigger and stronger. They thought that having more land would make the Soviet Union safer from other countries and help it become a big country in the world. They also thought they were bringing different peoples and lands together that should be one country. So the borders began to move again, adding more land. In the West, the Soviet Union got a lot of new land. It took parts of eastern Poland and made them part of the country. 3 small countries called Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania near the sea were also made part of the Soviet Union. They became like states inside the big union. The Soviet Union fought with Finland and took land from that country too. Later, land was also added from Romania. In the East, after a big world war, the Soviet Union took important islands from Japan. These were the southern half of a large island called Sakhalin, and a group of islands known as the Kuril Islands. Taking these lands pushed the country's border far out into the Pacific Ocean. With this new land, the Soviet Union became even larger than the old Russian Empire had ever been. It was the largest country in the world by area, covering a very large amount of land, crossing many time zones. To control and use this big land, the Soviet government built many very large projects. They built thousands of miles of new roads and very long train lines to connect faraway parts of the country. They built many factories in different places. They also worked hard to find and use the natural things found in these lands, like the large forests, lots of oil, gas, and rock materials. Sometimes people were sent to work in camps in difficult areas, like Siberia and the far north, to get these things. The Soviet Union made a system that joined many different areas and peoples under one rule. The idea was to have a strong, one country that reached across a huge part of the world and had safe borders. Holding this large amount of land was seen as very important for the Soviet Union's power and future for many years. This time showed that the wish to hold and make land bigger, which was a big part of Russia's story before, continued under the new country's rule, making it a truly giant land. 7. Russia now. In the year 1991, the big country called the Soviet Union ended. Russia is still a very, very big country today, the biggest in the world, but it is smaller than the Soviet Union was. When the Soviet Union ended, many new countries became free. Russia now has new neighbors and new borders with these countries. Some of these borders are peaceful today, like the long border with China. But some borders have had problems. For example, in the area called Chechnya in the south, there was fighting for many years. Russia worked to keep this land. In another country called Georgia, also in the south, there was also fighting. Russia said some parts of Georgia were new, independent countries, but most of the world does not agree. More recently, there was fighting in Ukraine. In 2014, Russia took the land called Crimea from Ukraine. In 2022, Russia started a big war in Ukraine and said that more land in the east and south of Ukraine was now part of Russia. This is not accepted by many other countries. Russia also looks to the north. It says it should have a large part of the Arctic Ocean and the land under the ice, because it has many resources like gas. Having such a large country is good in some ways. Russia has many resources like oil, gas, and metals deep in the ground. It has big forests and a lot of fresh water. But the size also makes things hard. It is difficult to manage everything across 11 time zones. It is costly to build roads and trains across such distances. Many parts of the country are very cold or far away, so not many people live there. Most people live in the Western European part. So today, Russia's map shows a giant country. Its size comes from a long history of growing. This big land brings both good things, like resources, and big problems, like managing the land, and sometimes fighting over borders with its neighbors. 8. The story of a giant land. Russia is a very big country. It did not become so big quickly. It grew over many hundreds of years. Different things made it grow. One big reason was safety. Russia's land is mostly flat. There are no high mountains or large oceans to protect it from other countries. So, Russia's leaders wanted more land around them. This extra land, like a wide belt, helped make the center safer.
They thought they needed to keep growing to keep what they already had. People also wanted money and valuable things. In the East, Siberia had many animals with expensive fur, like sable. People went there to get furs and trade them. Later, people found other riches, like oil, gas, and minerals in different parts of the country. New lands in the south were good for farming. Russia often met and sometimes fought with other big countries. These fights were about who would control certain lands. Russia fought with countries to the south and west and also far in the east. Winning these fights meant Russia took more land. Special groups of soldiers called Cossacks helped a lot. They lived on the edges of Russia's land. They were brave fighters. They helped take new places and keep them safe for Russia. They were important for moving east into Siberia and south into new lands. Later, after the Tsars, the Soviet Union was formed. This new country kept most of the land Russia had before. The Soviet Union even added some more land after big wars. This made the country even larger than it was before. Today, Russia is still the biggest country in the world by land area. Its large size gives it many resources, like oil, gas, and wood. But being so big is also hard. It is difficult to manage and protect such a large area. Many people live in the western part, but the eastern part is very empty. Building roads and connecting everything is a big job. Russia's size is still important in how it acts in the world today. We have seen how Russia grew big step by step. We saw why leaders wanted more land and how people searched for riches. We learned about the soldiers who helped and how the country changed over time. Thinking about this long story, what do you think is the hardest problem for such a giant country today?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.